In breaking news, one person was sent to the hospital tonight following a shooting in Northeast Portland. It happened on Northeast Grand Avenue near MLK Jr. Boulevard at about 8:40 tonight. Police said a woman was taken to the hospital, but we don't know her condition. A suspect has also been detained, but no other information was given about them. PPB said it will release more information about this case in the morning.
And we'll continue to stay across that. Our top story, though, tonight, a snapshot of what we are seeing on the streets now being played out in the statistics. Numbers that, not surprisingly, show that there are more people homeless than in years past. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm David Molko.
And I'm Laurel Porter. Today we got the first official count of homeless people since 2019 in the Portland metro area. It's called the Point in Time Count, and it's required by the federal government every other year.
Let's bring in Alma McCarty now. Alma, walk us through what these numbers show.
Well, David, Laurel, this report confirms what many already know, that homelessness in Portland and the surrounding area continues to be a huge struggle and a problem without easy solutions. The executive director of Join, a Portland homeless services agency, said right now they're getting people into permanent housing at high rates, but the need keeps growing.
Hit the streets for another day.
In 2022, the Point in Time survey conducted in late January counted more than 6,600 people experiencing homelessness across Multnomah, Washington, and Clackamas counties. Multnomah County alone counted more than 5,200 people experiencing homelessness, an increase of around 1,000 people since the last Point in Time count in 2019. Of that number, nearly 1,500 people were in emergency shelters, 686 in transitional housing, and more than 3,000 were unsheltered.
I'm not surprised at all, unfortunately.
More than half of those surveyed say they were experiencing chronic homelessness. Officials say people of color made up almost 40% of everyone counted this year.
I am really disappointed in the overrepresentation of communities of color in homelessness.
Katrina Holland leads Join, a homeless services agency in Portland that helps people get into permanent housing and retain it.
I think a lot of us knew and could see and feel the impact of homelessness increasing in the area, while the Joint office and agencies like ours and others are placing more people in housing than we ever have and quicker than we ever have. Keeping up with this inflow into new houselessness is going to be really challenging with the COVID-19 fallout.
The federally mandated count is merely a glimpse into the scope of the issue. Officials stressing that homelessness isn't static, and the number of people requiring services and aid is much larger than any one night count.
We assume some undercounting. We assume that there's going to be challenges in methodology, regardless of which methodology we use.
Holland said homelessness here and everywhere is a symptom of a larger problem.
COVID-19 was really just a cherry on top that exacerbated all the systemic issues that have been creating homelessness in our community in the first place.
Portland City Commissioner Dan Ryan reacted to the numbers, saying he's, quote, deeply disappointed in the execution of the point in time count, calling the methodology behind it flawed. In a statement, he called on more real-time data to understand the problem. We should mention Ryan is also running for re-election. David?
Thank you, Alma. Well, and how to tackle Oregon's homeless crisis was near the top of a debate Laurel and I co-hosted on Tuesday in partnership with the City Club of Portland. So with less than 2 weeks to go to the primary, tonight on The Story, Pat Doris broke down some of their plans and promises.
The problems with homelessness are not limited to the greater Portland area. There are issues all over the state of Oregon. And whoever becomes governor in the fall is going to have their hands full with just that one issue. How are you going to solve it? How are you going to deal with it? Those are tough questions to answer right now. So we took those to the leading Republican candidates for governor. We had a debate Tuesday. Here's what they had to say.
And in this state, we're like number one in addiction and almost number 50 in actual services that people have access to. And if you talk to police officers, you know, this is taking up about 15 to 30% of their time. They're trying to work with people that are in crisis on our streets, and there's really only two options. They can take them to the emergency room or they can take them to jail. So we need infrastructure. And so the plan that I have is based after the elderly care model. It's 3 levels of care. It's community-based. First level is where you would have, let's say, your memory care patients. Then you would have assisted living and independent living. And we need to start with our people that are struggling with addiction and mental health that are unsheltered, and start them with the most secure level of care and get them healthy and stabilized. And then we got to make it so that we're not seeing people camping on our streets, and we have to say no to that.
This has been an abysmal failure, our homeless policy, and our career politicians should be ashamed. So I bring some unique experience and expertise. I understand this at a gut level and at an intellectual level because I'm 40 years in recovery. When I stopped drinking at 28, I was a chronic round-the-clock alcoholic. I understand at this very deep level, what we are doing is backwards. We do not have a homeless problem. We primarily have a substance abuse problem on our streets. And we are enabling these people to commit slow suicide. This is not compassionate. It is absolutely inhumane. I would set up a database. I would then go to low barrier homeless shelters that would push these people off the street and at least get a roof over their head, then reallocate all this housing money back to treatment. We need to turn the housing first model on its head. I'll tell you what, we have created a homeless industrial complex, and I will put an end to it.
We have a proposal to house an alternative location under that Ninth Circuit ruling on Port of Portland property. We can have property there that we house folks. And then we have our own police security firm as Port of Portland. As governor, we appoint the next commissioner. We can get security beefed up there. And when those folks break rules in the law, they go to jail. Sam Adams actually had a plan that was very similar to ours, copying our plan. Unfortunately, what we saw is they couldn't muster the local, support to be able to put that into place. That's exactly why it needs to be done at the state level. That's why we need to use state resources to do it. That's why we need to use Port of Portland property, and we need to enforce our rules. So if the city of Portland's not willing to stand up as our next governor, we certainly will. It's a big reason why we're looking to triple the size of the state police.
No, I would say if they were breaking, I would say if they're breaking the law after having access to a shelter and voluntary programs to help themselves, and then insisted on going back on the streets and living there or in the parks, in my mind, they're breaking the law and there has to be a penalty. I think an appropriate penalty is to move them off the streets and into some form of a locked shelter incarceration. I would do that. It's not breaking the law to be poor or mentally ill or drug addicted. It's against the law to live on the streets when you have an alternative that is there to serve you.
So if they don't take you up on the alternative to go to a shelter, you think that it's okay to put them in jail?
For a period of time, I think that is correct.
You can watch the entire debate on KGW's YouTube page, along with our debate with the Democratic frontrunners who have their own homeless plans.
It was a really interesting conversation. By the way, a brand new poll gives fresh insight into the GOP race. According to Nelson Research, former House Republican leader Christine Drazan appears to be the front runner with 18.9% support. By the way, she dropped out of our debate just a couple hours before, didn't give a reason. Bob Tiernan in second with 14%. Dr. Bud Pierce in third at 9.5%. Now, here's the thing. 27% of Republican primary voters who were surveyed say they are still undecided. That poll surveyed 514 likely voters from April 29th to May 2nd, Election Day, Tuesday, May 17th.
Now to the continued fallout over the leaked Supreme Court draft opinion and the prospect of the court overturning Roe v. Wade in a massive blow to abortion rights. States on both sides are already making moves in response. Yesterday, Oklahoma's governor signed one of the strictest abortion laws in the nation, while New Jersey codified a woman's right to an abortion into state law. And today, President Biden addressed whether a reversal on abortion may be just the beginning.
What are the next things that are going to be attacked? Because this MAGA crowd is really the most extreme political organization that's existed in American history.
Meanwhile, the Chief Justice asked the Supreme Court marshal to find whoever leaked the draft opinion, though legal experts say that person, even if caught, is unlikely to face prosecution if they had legitimate access to the document. From the federal courthouse to the Portland State University campus, protesters took to the streets in reaction to the draft opinion. The protests in Portland were mostly peaceful, but some did do damage during marches in downtown. That's what happened to a downtown Starbucks yesterday. You can see in pictures here provided by Portland police. And hardest hit was the Portland Exchange, a small grocery and cafe connected to a new Hilton-owned hotel. Vandals in the crowd broke out several windows there. We talked to one man who told us he thinks police are limited in what they can do to stop it.
It just seems to me that the citizens of Portland, if they had a change of mind, could support their police, and the police didn't have to worry about getting their face slapped. They could take care of the problem.
We did reach out to Portland Police for comment on last night's criminal activity. We did not get a response, but we do know they made one arrest.
Well, now to progress, but also frustration for rape survivors in Washington. Starting this week, the state is required to process all new DNA rape kits it collects within 45 days. That is a far cry from the 2 years they had been taking for most of these kits. But as Catherine Cook reports, many survivors are still waiting.
No one should get away with that. And no means no.
Jane, as we'll call her, is a rape survivor. We've agreed to record her in shadow and distort her voice to protect her identity. Jane was assaulted last year in Southwest Washington. Traumatized and scared, she still found the courage to call 911 and go to the hospital for a rape kit.
You want justice for not only yourself, but, for other people if this happened to them by the same person.
But more than 8 months later, she's still waiting for results.
It shouldn't take this long for a rape kit to come back.
In Washington, Jane's story is not unique. 3 years ago, the state had a backlog of 10,000 untested rape kits, the impetus for a new law passed in 2019, one that mandated that Washington State Patrol must process DNA samples from rape kits within 45 days, starting May 1st of this year. But as of May 1st, WSP says they're not quite there.
We committed to cutting that wait time by over 90%, from 600 plus days to 45 days. We're almost there. I wish we could. Had it not been for COVID, we would have been there months and months ago.
Chris Loftus is communications director for WSP. He says more staff and new robotics at their expanded Vancouver lab allow the facility to operate 24/7. State Representative Tina Orwell headed up most of the test kit legislation.
When we picked the 45 days, we knew it was a big lift, and we said, what do you need? And I feel like, despite COVID, despite some of the challenges they face, they really are getting us so close.
State Patrol says on average, they get 193 new sexual assault kits every month. They hope to reach the 45-day turnaround goal with new cases by the end of this year. As for the backlog of older kits, WSP is outsourcing them to other labs to make room for more.
WSP says of the 10,000 backlog kits they've tested, roughly 25% have come back with usable data. 10% of those included DNA from existing suspect profiles, some from cases around the country.
That means we have a serial criminal. And so the assumption that those were of little to no investigatory or prosecutorial value was just simply wrong.
For Jane, every day she waits for her rape kit results is stressful.
I know for me, I'm always looking over my shoulder. I'm paranoid I'm going to run into the person.
She hopes the waiting is almost over.
It's something that should be reported, and those people should be off the street.
In Vancouver, Catherine Cook, KGW News.